All right. Hey, Joe fans. I think we are live. I am Joe Fan 82, and this is a very special live stream. Here with me is the man, the myth, the legend, the G.I. Joe icon, Hooded Cobra Commander 788. Thanks for joining me.
Hello, thanks for having me.
All right. If you guys are here in the chat, let me know so I can, so we know, so we know that people are actually watching here. And if you can see us and hear us, let us know in the chat. It looks like we've got some people in the room. Classic action figures, a Yazarius 3001. Hey, Mike Adams.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all.
So if you guys, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but HCC and I have worked together over the years several times, but this is the first time we're talking live in person, well, virtual, but virtually in person.
That is true. We've worked together several times, but we've never actually had like a conversation like this. And that's just weird, but yeah, that's true. So
Yeah.
nice talking to you. Nice to actually speak to you in sort of in person, kind of.
Yeah, it's weird, but yeah, it's cool. Hey, Woodman29, Chris Doherty. No relation to Shannon, I guess. Shannon Doherty. Hey, all right. So HCC, in case anyone watching has been living under a rock and has no idea who you are, could you just give us a rundown of who you are and what your YouTube channel is all about, and maybe your history with G.I. Joe?
Okay. Well, I do G.I. Joe toy reviews on YouTube. I also try to do like comic book reviews and stuff like that, but I mainly focus on toys, and I mainly focus on the vintage era, meaning between 1982 and 1994, that Real American Hero toy line. Yeah, I talk about the toys. I try to throw in a little bit of humor and a little bit of fun stuff as well. But that's what I do. The show that I do is usually weekly, but I've been running a little bit behind. That's perhaps an understatement. I've been working on one that's involves some collaborators and it's kind of a bigger one. Not so much as a big item. I'm not reviewing the USS Flag again, but it's big in terms of it covers a lot. And if you want a hint at what I'm working on, if you can figure out what that is right over my shoulder, that's part of what I'm working on. Yeah, I just do G.I. Joe toy reviews. I've been doing that for in April it'll be 7 years. 7 years. And I've tried to also kind of do my part to bring the community together and to have community activities and collaborations and fun stuff beyond just talking about toys. I feel like we have a really great community in G.I. Joe. And we've got a lot of people who work really well together. We've got a lot of talent, including Joe Fan 82. I love working with people, and I love bringing other people together to work together. So we do an annual event called Cobra Convergence. It's a big collaborative event that focuses on Cobra, and it gives us all just a reason to work together and do fun stuff. So that's kind of the rundown of who I am and what I do. I promise you will see more videos. I swear. I'm a little behind, little behind, but I'm working on it. You can see in the background here. I'm working on it. I swear. But yeah, that's me.
I know how that is. I fell way behind last year with my job, and I just didn't have time to do stuff. So far, January, I've just been catching up on what I should have gotten done last year. So
Yeah.
you so what years were you as a kid? Were you into GI Joe?
I started right with 1982 with the straight arm figures from that year. I remember Breaker was my first action figure that I got, and I fell in love with GI Joe right from the start, and I continued to collect really enthusiastically up through about 1987. Then my interest in the toys started to wane a bit. I was getting a little bit older. The toys were getting a little bit weirder. And then I got a little bit from 1988. And then my recollection is that my last action figure was Rock and Roll version 2 from 1989. So that kind of is the era that as a kid I was interested in GI Joe. I still followed the comic book a bit after I stopped collecting and playing with the toys. And at the tail end of my collecting of the toys, we weren't playing with them like we did when we were younger. We were actually customizing. So we were using a lot of those figures for parts to customize and to create our own. We created our own team, of like a sub team of GI Joe called the Wolverines, my friends and I. And we wrote up our own file cards and we did our own comic books and stuff like that. But that's like what we were doing for like the last year when we were playing with or when we were collecting GI Joe toys. But yeah, that's my era. I start with 1982. And it kind of tapers off in 1987 to my last figure in 1989.
If it's so interesting is that I'm like on the other end. So as you were coming out, I was coming in. And so you G.I. Joe the movie was sort of the jumping off point for you, whereas me, Sunbow was not on the air. I kind of have vague memories of maybe seeing a rerun or maybe something on VHS or something. But the Deke hadn't started yet. So all I had was the movie from it was a local mom and pop video rental store, M&M Video. I remember it vividly because they had a candy dispenser at the front with M&Ms. They were called M&M Video.
Nice.
But I remember all the time we would get G.I. Joe the movie because that was the only media we had at the time. So one of the things I wanted to really showcase here is that I'm on this end, you're on that end, and we're getting along.
Yes. There's no reason not to get along. And since I started doing this channel and I started getting some stuff from eras after I was no longer collecting as a kid, I've discovered some really great stuff that was released in the late 80s and in the 90s. Now, obviously, my preference is still very much geared toward the 80s stuff. But there was some awesome stuff released in the 90s. That's I understand that's more your era. And so I've learned a lot from you and from your channel because I'm coming to that era with a blank slate because I don't know. I didn't play with them as a kid. I didn't get them as a kid. All I have is my adult eyes to look at them and decide what I think about them. But you've got like a more of a personal investment in that era, and I think that's fascinating, and that's one reason why I like watching the stuff that you produce.
I remember seeing. I don't know if it was Sears or which company it was that had the catalog with Serpentor and his air chariot. I vividly remember seeing that. Now it could be one of those things that I remember, but it didn't exist. But I remember seeing that, but I never saw it in the store. Never had it as a kid. But I saw the movie, so I was like, oh, if only I could get that. Serpentor with his air chariot. It's so cool. But I think that stuff was off the shelves by the time I was getting into it.
Yeah, the Sunbow series, of course, was canceled after the '87 movie, which I regret. I really would like to have seen how Sunbow would have presented some of those characters from. I mean, they didn't fit in all of the '87 characters into the movie, so I'd love to see how they would have presented 1987 to 1989 in animation form, but we never got the chance to see that, which that's too bad. I think everybody knows I'm not the biggest fan of the '87 movie, but there are parts of the movie that I still liked. I liked the Sergeant Slaughter bits of the movie. Even though I'm not a wrestling fan, I'm a fan of Sergeant Slaughter through G.I. Joe.
I was not a big wrestling fan either. My knowledge, Brian, his last year was '88 too, so he's right there with you. My knowledge of wrestling consists of the wrestlers that crossed over into other media: Hulk Hogan, Slaughter, Dwayne Johnson, and John Cena. I think Slaughter is one of those characters that I think crosses the divide. I think for the most part, most of the fandom, G.I. Joe fandom, likes Slaughter, but he was there for all of it, for Sunbow and for the movie and for Deke afterwards.
Yeah, I had the chance to meet Sergeant Slaughter at Joe Fest a couple years ago, and he's he's a really cool guy. We showed up to Joe Fest a day early so we could hang out and meet people, and it was kind of late at the hotel, and we were kind of walking back to our rooms from the hotel bar, and here comes Sergeant Slaughter rolling in through the hotel lobby.
And
I got a big Cobra shirt on, and he's like, "That's what I'm looking for right there, Cobra." I didn't even know what to say. I was like, yes, sir. Hello, sir. Hello, Mr. Slaughter. But he's a really cool guy, and he seems to have really relished his role as the face of G.I. Joe for that time period. The Sergeant Slaughter bits of parts of the '87 movie I rather enjoyed, and I enjoyed some other parts too. Most of the parts that didn't have to do with Cobra Law, I actually quite liked. But that's one that I struggle with, and I don't want to start no controversy now. All right, don't at me. But this is not news to anyone.
No.
But I was always a comic book guy. I came to the comic book first before the cartoon started. So the Larry Hama version of the G.I. Joe universe is the version that's most familiar to me. So that's usually what I go back to, and you get the Arashikage tattoos from that and stuff. So that's just kind of that's my vibe.
Speaking of Slaughter, I think it would be a huge missed opportunity on Hasbro and Paramount's part not to have him at least do a cameo in whatever, not Snake Eyes. He wouldn't fit in Snake Eyes.
Yeah.
But the movie after that, whatever the G.I. Joe movie is, at least I can't imagine, but don't say anything to anyone. Keep it a complete surprise and just have him, show up on screen. Hey, what you guys do?
That would be beautiful. I would love that. I think most fans would like it. Those little nods to the older fan base, I think I think everybody would enjoy that. I understand that they've got to aim at a younger audience, and they can't entirely focus on old folks like us. But a little wink and a nod to some of the older fans, having having Sergeant Slaughter just do it, even just like a walk-on cameo or something like that. That would be really awesome, and I think everybody would just get a thrill at seeing Sergeant Slaughter connected to G.I. Joe again. Now, there may be some contractual issues that he has, because I think there is some kind of contract deal he has with WWE where it limits what he can do related to G.I. Joe, which sucks, but hey, you get enough lawyers on it, they can figure out a way around it. You know what I'm saying? So let's make this happen. Hasbro and Paramount, let's make this happen.
Oh, so talking about the movie, so there's a Snake Eyes movie that's coming out. Well, we hope is coming out this year.
Fingers.
Yeah. What would that movie have to have in it in order for you to either leave the theater or turn off the TV feeling satisfied?
I tell you what, I'm going in it with very few, if any, expectations, and this I know is not the approach that a lot of people from my era are taking, but I want to give the movie a chance to take risks and to try something new and to do something more noteworthy than what we've seen so far in the live action movies. Something that is more than just a summer popcorn flick. Something that people talk about. And the impression that I get is that's what they're going for. I think they're going for more of a genre, like a martial arts genre picture, than just an empty action movie. That's what I want. I want something more than an empty action movie. I want something with some substance to it, and it doesn't have to necessarily follow the Hama vision, which it won't. We already know that it has its own story, and that's fine. Just make it good. Make it something that people talk about, so that people are actually talking about G.I. Joe again, and G.I. Joe is actually in the popular consciousness again. That's what I want. So, but as far as specifics, I'm keeping an open mind. I want to see. I want to see them experiment. I want to see them take some chances.
I think we're on the same wavelength there. I don't have any expectation that they're going to follow the Hama storyline exactly. If you look at any other comic book adaptation, they never follow the comic storyline exactly. I mean, there might be an exception somewhere, but I can't think of one. Even like all the MCU movies, all like the DC comic movies, that they might take stuff here and there, but they don't. It's very hard to adapt something directly. I think
that's right. You have to go with the strengths of the medium, and that very rarely does that mean like a direct one-for-one adaptation from a comic book. The only comic book I can think of where they really tried to do, and maybe succeeded doing like a direct one-to-one adaptation, is like Sin City. That was really close to the comic book, but that's the exception. They're different mediums, and so you have to go with the strength of the medium. So you gotta make some changes, but you draw the good parts, you draw the strong parts out of the source material that you can successfully adapt into film, and that's what I'm hoping for. I've got to give them a chance. I've got to give them a chance to try. I'm not gonna prejudge the movie. I'm just gonna go in with an open mind and see what they give us.
Yeah, I'm hoping that a lot of Joe fans will have the same, opinion and same expectations, or not even have expectations. Going in. Just want to say hello to some of the people here in the chat. Yorktown Joe, Eric Golinger, Jakey, Painted Plastic. Hey,
Penny Plastic.
Matt Rubin, and I'm trying to make sure that Gaz. Hey. So I apologize if I miss. They gone. Hey. All right. I see a couple of people commented about classified series. So I saw you had some on your channel. Are you actively collecting classified, or what's your status with the classified figures?
Well, I was, and I had been doing pretty well about getting the classified figures, but the first run of Target exclusives were such a pain to get that it kind of killed my enthusiasm a little bit. And now they've got this whole they've got more exclusives to Target, and I just don't feel like chasing those. So I'm going to let everybody else go through all the trouble to find their Vipers and find their Fireflies. Good luck to you guys. Good luck. I sincerely wish everybody the best of luck, but I will not be competing with you for those figures. And I've got some on pre-order from Hasbro, and I will get those, but I'm not as active in collecting classified figures now. If something interesting comes out, I'll probably try to nail it down, but I'm not going to be a completist at this point. I've actually gone back to trying to fill some gaps in my vintage collection. So that's kind of where my collecting dollar is going right now. But I like the figures that I've gotten so far. The figures themselves are, for the most part, pretty solid. And I like most of them, almost all of them. Mm-hmm. I think what's killing my enthusiasm is that the hunt for the figures was not fun. It was just mostly frustrating.
Yep. Part of me kind of liked having to hunt, which it reminded me of back in the day before the internet. When you're a kid, you go to the store, you didn't know what was going to be there, and actually seeing new figures, or the surprise, that rush. But that only works if there is stuff on the pegs. If there's
right.
After several trips of not finding anything, you're like, this is killing me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm the same boat. I went to Target. I went to 2 Targets a couple days late for this last, the Firefly Viper. Of course, didn't see anything, and I'm not driving all over the county looking.
Yeah.
So whenever I get them, that'll be fine. If not, I'm not going to be stressing about it.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I don't know about you, but I'm not going to go on eBay and pay eBay prices for these things either. The Viper looks pretty sweet, but I just can't do it, man. Not this time. I got to let it go.
Like the Trooper, did you end up getting a Trooper?
Yeah, I did get a Trooper. With a lot of effort, I got all of the first run of the Target exclusives. I actually managed to secure the Trooper and the Baroness and whoever the heck else it was. So yeah, I got all of them.
I never got a Trooper, never saw one, but then they released they had the infantry the infantry figure come up for pre-order, which is basically the same thing minus a few.
Yeah. I
think he doesn't have the face mask or the armband, but basically the same. So I pre-ordered those with no problem.
Good.
So I'll have close to what the Trooper was, but so
those army builders, though, if they were to produce those in larger numbers, people would buy them. I mean, it's almost like making money. It's like printing money to make these army builders. People want to army build those troopers. They should be showing up at your Walmarts and your Targets by the pallet full.
Just load it, take it off the truck.
And people will buy them. Don't feed the scalpers. That's right.
Yeah, I will be very surprised if we don't see like a 2-pack or something on like Hasbro Pulse or even at retail for the army builders. And how many army builders exist in Cobra? Like dozens and dozens.
Yeah.
I think I was listening to, I forget if it was What's on Joe Mind or Full Force, one of them. And they were talking about Lenny from Hasbro they had this like round table with media people, and they talk about they didn't know what the expectations were, so they had really low production runs, which is why and the demand was so high. That's why we didn't see the amount of figures that we wanted. But I think they're correcting that for this, going forward.
I hope so.
It's very, I kind of understand where they're coming from, because it's very tricky, like how many people actually want this versus how many do we make, because you don't want to have thousands of figures just sitting, and because that's what will happen with what happened with the last modern figures at Toys R Us. They ended up just sitting there because no one was buying them, and Toys R Us was like, well, we're not going to keep buying, reselling these for you if they're just going to sit on our shelves.
Right.
Looking through the comments, I am not good at keeping track of the comments. I think Matt's right. Mark Weber mentioned that on What's on Joe Mind.
Yeah, and Mark's a pretty smart guy, and I'm a big fan of What's on Joe Mind as well. So good. Thanks for plugging the show.
If you guys are not watching or listening to What's on Joe Mind, be sure you check them out. They're here on YouTube, and they also have the podcast. That's where I originally know them from, but now they graduated to having a show here on YouTube.
Yeah.
So, talking about classified, so what are some of the figures you would like to see them do in the 6-inch scale?
I'd like to see them do Hawk. Believe it or not, I would like to see them do Serpentor. I think it would be really interesting to see what they can do with Serpentor. And I'd like to see them do Stalker, because Stalker is my favorite character. Now, not long ago, somebody sent me a custom 6-inch Stalker figure that looked really good.
Really?
If they get anywhere in that ballpark of how well this guy did this custom, then that's a sweet figure. However, I understand they're probably not going to call the guy Stalker.
I've heard that.
It doesn't elicit the same reaction as it did in 1982. I get that, but a figure based on Stalker, I would buy. I would definitely jump back in to get that one. But I mean, just think about at that scale. Think about all the details they could put into a Serpentor uniform. I think that would be really cool. It could be really cool.
Yeah. Serpentor is one of the ones I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do, and I'd be very surprised if they don't do one, considering what we've already seen and what I'm pretty sure Alley Viper is on the way at some point. He's been in the artwork.
Yeah, it keeps showing up in the artwork, so I assume we're going to get Alley Viper.
And I thought that the figures or the characters that they've showcased on the website, gijoe.com, would be sort of first in line for getting figures, but that doesn't really seem to hold true. Yeah. Like, who did I just did a video on? I think it was, I forget which one. One of the classified figures, he wasn't even on the website, the character, which doesn't make any
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure about the logic of that, but um, they do seem to be aiming at more popular characters first. So we're getting characters that people will recognize from the Sunbow series or the comic book, or that were otherwise just really popular. So we're getting Zartan, we're getting Lady J and Flint. So I think as they go, it's going to kind of be sort of that pecking orders, like the most popular to, and they'll get down into a lower tier of popularity. I don't know that we'll ever see a classified toll booth. So if anybody's holding out for that, classified cross country, I don't know, but they'll get into some lower tiers of popularity. But I think they'll probably continue to reissue the top tier, most popular figures in new decos like Duke and Snake Eyes.
Yorktown Joe says they could just call him Ranger and make sure to use the air quotes. The figure is more important than the name on the box.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. And that would be my proposal, is just call him Ranger. I think that's fine. I think, in fact, in the comic book series, I think there was a page, like a dialogue error, where they just called him Ranger. I'm for that. That's fine. I know, yeah, they don't have to call him Stalker. That's cool.
So with Stalker, would you want to see a direct adaptation of his vintage look, or would you rather see like an updated, more modern take?
Well, I assume they'll do a more updated, more modern take, but there are certain visual cues that you need in order to have, in order to make him Stalker, like the beret, give him a mustache, maybe keep the camouflage. I mean, as long as you hit those specific visual cues, so that you know that you have a figure of that character, there's a wide range of other things that they can do with it that I would be cool with. Now, my Stalker is my favorite character, and so the way I imagine Stalker is, he's like a career army guy, right? So he's going to have a regulation haircut until the day he dies. Until he, like, probably on the day he dies, he will still get up at 5:30 a.m. for PT. That's just Stalker's character to me.
I was going to ask you about the hair, because in the Pursuit of Cobra line, we've got the dreadlocked version.
It looks really cool. It looks really cool. I cannot deny that looks awesome. It just doesn't I just don't see Stalker doing that. Stalker is, to me, Stalker is career army, and he's very much regulation and by the book. That's just my idea. But again, it doesn't have to fit with my idea. I would just like to have certain visual cues to identify it as a Stalker figure. But other than that, yeah, there's a ton of stuff they can do with it, and I would be interested in seeing what kind of modern update they would do to his uniform. He came out in '82, and those '82 figures were pretty generic. What made him stand out was that camouflage.
Yep.
And of course the beret and everything, but other than the camouflage, he had the same uniform as everybody else. So it would not be a bad thing if they were to, I don't know, spice that up a little bit.
Matt says he'd like to see the Crimson Twins. I'm right there with you, Matt.
That would be cool.
And Gaz says he'd like to see Shockwave and a Cobra Eel. I'm very surprised we haven't seen any aquatic characters yet.
Good point.
No Shipwreck like Mike Adams. Shipwreck to me is one of the most popular characters, and no mention of
if Shipwreck isn't on isn't on their radar right now, I would expect Shipwreck ought to be pretty soon. I would think.
And Matt also mentioned Zorana, which I would love to see. Zorana, I'd love to see them do characters that maybe were hard to get in the modern line. Like Zorana was an exclusive figure that not many people were able to get. So I'd love to see what they could do with Zorana.
Sorry, it just popped into my head that they've already done a red ninja, but it doesn't look anything like the vintage red ninja. Their red ninja is actually red. So there's your chance, Hasbro, to do a color variation. Do a red ninja, but do it in the vintage red ninja colors. So no red.
What's funny is they did a Marvel Legends red ninja that actually looks more like the GI Joe red ninja or the Cobra red ninja. So it's kind of funny. Classic action figures of Law and Order would be awesome. That would be cool. And I heard Lenny talk somewhere. I heard Lenny from Hasbro, say that they are thinking that animal companions are on their radar, but they want them to be not just a static, a static, immovable character. You want to be able to move. If it's Freedom, you want to be able to move the wings. If it's Timber, move his head around and stuff. So I like that they're taking that extra step.
That's good. That was actually the top of my list of questions about animal companions is will they be static or will they give us something that's articulated?
Sounds like he wants to do articulated, and I think he said at this stage, at 6-inch stage, they should be articulated. Whereas at the 4-inch or the vintage, it's harder to make something that small articulated well. I think it's what he said.
And I think that's important. I think if there were a lot of naysayers about the 6-inch line, and I mean nobody has to collect anything that they don't want. I mean, you don't want the 6-inch line, then don't get it. But they are doing the 6-inch line, and if you're going to do something in a larger scale, I feel like you ought to take advantage of the benefits of that scale. Articulation on animals and greater details on uniforms and more points of articulation. If you're going to do the scale, then take advantage of all the things that you can do at that scale that you cannot do at the 4-inch scale.
I want to, because we're moving quite along here, I want to bring up HasLab and ask you, what would you want to see? I think you've answered this question before somewhere, but for us here tonight, what would you want to see HasLab do for a G.I. Joe project?
I would really love to see the Cobra cargo helicopter that is used in the comic book series all the time and never had a toy. I mean, to me, that's the kind of thing that a HasLab is for. Is to do something that never had a chance to exist before. I don't think they're going to do a USS Flag. I'm sorry, folks, that just pause for a moment and think about how much that would cost. And let's move on. But I always loved that helicopter, and in the comic book they used it all the time as if it were a toy. It had the same basic design throughout the entire series, and yet it didn't exist, and I think that would be pretty cool. That's not to say that that's what they would do. They probably go with something a bit higher profile. Maybe they probably maybe do something like that. Cobra air carrier like they showed in the animated series. I think that may be a slightly higher profile thing, also larger. But personally, I want that helicopter. Never had a chance to have the helicopter. Give me the helicopter. It's just too cool. So that's where I throw my hat in.
And you're talking 1/18th scale, right?
I would assume so.
I can imagine this.
Yeah. Oh, sure. um,
That would be the size of the flag if it was.
Yes. So yeah, I my assumption is 1/18th scale. If you're doing, if you're going to do it in the 6-inch scale for the 6-inch figures, wow, then I'm not sure. If you do it if you do something for 6-inch figures, I think I'd like to see a his tank at that scale. I think you could add some details to the his tank and do it to scale, and it would be a large, it would be a substantial vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
But for a HasLab project, it might be doable. There's no way it would be doable at retail. At least I assume not. But yeah, I think that at least that's what comes to mind.
I go back and forth with what I think they're going to do. On the one hand, they're really pushing the classified line over the retro line. That's where most of their, efforts are going into. So kind of thing on the one hand that they're going to do, if they're going to do a HasLab, it's going to be for that. But on the other hand, there's a lot more vintage and the 4-inch modern collectors out there that they could appeal to. For me personally, I would like to see a 1/18th scale pit with the different levels like we saw in the comic, and it showed you like the different areas. That's what, with like some lighting, built into it, LED, lights and stuff.
That would be really cool.
Whether it actually happens or not. What I don't like about HasLab is I feel like the window is kind of short. That they tell you, all right, you need to give us $500 in the next 30 days in order to get this.
Yeah. That is, especially considering, I mean, the G.I. Joe fan community is smaller than Transformers or Star Wars. So that's a big ask to get enough Joe fans to shell out that much money with that short notice to cover a larger scale project. That would be a challenge. But the thing is, like, if they decide to do something smaller for that reason, then I mean, if it's small, then they don't necessarily need to do a HasLab for it. And a 1/18th scale pit would be brilliant. That would be the coolest thing ever. HasLab Whale or Night Raven?
Whale or Night Raven.
Now, the Whale is my favorite vehicle. I wouldn't turn that down.
I never had a Whale, so I would also be on that bandwagon. Yorktown Joe says, I love the old 83 headquarters redone. Missed that one. Maybe have it, but with walls this time.
Yeah.
So Cobra can't just walk in.
It's had one small weakness. You just walk around to the back and you just walk right in.
Other than that, it was great.
You have to use your imagination. It's like Les Nessman on WKRP. You just have to imagine there are walls there.
Trying to follow the chat here, guys. Here's one. Angel Alias. I think I got that right. How do you guys feel about the new in quotes retro Fang they remold or they reissued? Have you seen images for that one?
I have seen images, and I did see how they they just kind of I'd call it like beefed up the old design. So yeah, I have seen it. What do you think about it? It's your show.
I think it's okay. I think it's a little more compact. Probably I'm guessing to do with cutting down the cost. That everything comes down to money with Hasbro, I think. Which I'm actually surprised they retooled anything.
Right.
So where was it? It might have been What's on Your Mind again, that they were talking about that could possibly be a future classified vehicle that they shrunk down to 4-inch scale, and that it's truncated because it's made shorter because it's going to be in the 6-inch scale, which kind of makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, I could see that. Yeah. I think that like the calling it a retro line, we're getting pretty far away from any reasonable definition of retro, and that's not to say that it's not good or that people shouldn't like it or collect it. I got, in fact, right back there, I got a retro his tank, but calling it retro is a stretch. But I may pick up the Fang if I can find one. Because I'm curious. I'm just curious how it will differ from the vintage Fang when I actually have it in hand. Because that vintage Fang, it can be a little on the flimsy side on certain parts, and I'm feeling like maybe they fixed some of the structural issues that the vintage Fang had with the update. So I might get it. Just out of curiosity, just see how they updated it.
Jake E says that's the second Joe-related WKRP reference I've seen this weekend. Jake, you're hanging out with the right people.
Yeah. So look, this that's kind of the era that my references come from. I'm showing my age a little bit.
Yeah, I think Hasbro is officially now calling it the retro packaging line instead of just retro, which, all right. I'm still just calling it retro line because that's easier for me instead of retro packaging. It's easier for me to type in the title for my YouTube video, just calling it retro.
It is more accurate, though, to call it a retro packaging line because, I mean, that His Tank box for the retro His Tank is nice. It really evokes that vintage.
I was really surprised at the quality of the cardboard that they're using for those vehicle boxes. It's a thick, sturdy. It's not like the paper thin cardboard for the figures. It's like a heavy duty cardboard. Like I've got the Striker and the His Tank, and I'm keeping those boxes for display. I love the artwork, and then they're really sturdy. Robert Long has a controversial comment here. What if they made a quick kick with shoes?
I don't know. It might slow down his kick. He might not be that quick of a kick with shoes on.
Oh, but you got Stalker with the beret, quick kick. I don't know. For your feet, that's kind of
easy. I find it funny that he actually goes into combat with no shoes, even in an Arctic environment. He rolls in there without shoes on.
Oh, that's a possible solution there. Removable shoes.
Removable shoes. Yeah, there you go. I'd be on board with that. Yeah, I like it. As far as the retro line goes, I'm not actively collecting it. Like I'm not getting any of the carded figures. They're modern era figures, which is fine, but that's just not what I collect. So So that's I'm not going for that, but I may pick up some of the vehicles like the His tank. I'm a fan of the His tank. I haven't gotten the Ostriker yet, but I may pick one up if I find one. The Fang, out of curiosity, just pure curiosity, I may get the Fang. But that's not one that I'm actively collecting, only because I'm just not a modern collector. It's just not my era.
Something I don't think I've said here on the channel for you guys watching. Very recently, my youngest son, I've got two boys, my youngest has now, at least right now, he's in the phase where he likes G.I. Joe. Last week and a half, we've been watching a Sunbow episode a day. Then we've come after that, gone and played G.I. Joe. He's allowed to use, stuff that I have, but I've gotten him some of the retro figures, so he can have those figures, and he can do whatever I don't have to worry about anything getting lost or broken or whatever. So from a parent of a young kid, my perspective is it's great so far if you're able to have them, sit down, watch the show, get into it, and then have those figures to play with.
Yeah, that's great.
And they're doing the iconic characters. I know collectors like, oh, we've had Destro, we've had, actually Scarlet is a pretty good update, but some of the other, we've had Snake Eyes, we've had Storm Shadow, but for new kids, if they can get the figures and find them and see them, I think it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to talk about, we got a few minutes left here. I wanted to talk about your channel. And so you do vintage. Your goal for your channel is to review everything from the vintage line, 82 to 94, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you keep everything that you have reviewed, or do you review it and then out the door?
I'm keeping everything that I've reviewed. I'm trying not to get duplicates because, good Lord, I don't have space to put duplicates. So if I end up with duplicates, sometimes I will give away or sell the duplicates. But I'm keeping. I kind of like the idea of when I'm done with this project, having, at least for a little while, having an entirely complete vintage collection all in one place. It's an appealing idea to me. So I'm hanging on to things. That's not to say that I will hang on to them forever, but at least until I'm done with the project, I'm hanging on to them. In the past, I had sold some things because I figured I didn't need them, or I wouldn't need them for a long time, or I already had one and I didn't want to have a duplicate. And then something happened, like the one that I had would break or get lost, or I would need to reference that in a different video, and I wouldn't have it. So I've often regretted selling things when I've sold them. So yeah, I'm hanging on to them at least till the end of the project.
What percentage complete would you say you are? What percentage are you done with acquiring everything?
I'd say I'm about 2/3 of the way done, but the last third that I have to do is the hardest because it's like a lot of the stuff that's like really hard to find. So in terms of absolute numbers, I'm most of the way there. But in terms of like the difficulty in finishing and in completing things, the hardest part is ahead of me. Yeah, I do not have a heavy metal with this vintage microphone. And there's a bunch of 90s stuff that I don't have. I do not have a Toxo Lab. These things. Some of the Sears exclusives, like the Dreadnought Air Assault set, don't have it, and those things are stupid hard to find. So, yeah, it'll take a while. I'm getting there slowly.
And Woodman 29 made a good point about just prices have shot up, and I've noticed it. For you, probably haven't noticed it, but for the modern figures, they've gone up as well. It used to be, I'd say at least like 5 years ago, you could still go on Amazon and find a new modern in package figure for like $15.
Yeah.
With free shipping with Prime. Not anymore. Like you're lucky to find, I would say, I think like $25 is like 20 to 25 is like the low end of what you can find for new mint on card modern stuff. And I haven't actively been looking at vintage, but I assume I've heard from everybody prices have just gone through the roof.
I consider myself lucky to have gotten some of this stuff when I did, because there's no way I could afford to get the stuff that I already have if I had to buy it now. And one of the reasons that I've been focusing on the rare stuff lately is because the prices on those are just going up faster. And I want to try to acquire them while they're still somewhat in my price range before they just before I have to sell a kidney to get one. But yeah, that's absolutely true. Prices have gone nuts.
Do you have any theories as to why that is?
There are, there are theories out there. I'm not sure which of them I buy into, which I buy into the most. One theory is that collectors of Star Wars have finished their collections and they moved on to look for something else. Another theory is that you younger guys, are reaching an age where you're starting to collect again, and you're looking back at your nostalgic toys, and so increasing the demand. I've even seen some people blame it on the show The Toys That Made Us, as like boosting this, bringing to a wider audience the very idea that you could collect your old toys, which I guess some people didn't think about before. I don't know which theory I buy into, and maybe a combination of all of those things and other things. But the supply really is there. I mean, these were mass-produced items. They're not most of them are not rare exactly. It's the demand. The demand has shot up. It may be speculators. It may be people who are thinking that they're going to fund their kids' college by reselling these someday. I don't know. But I don't think that I have seen a unified theory of toy prices that I've 100% bought into, but I think it's probably a combination of more than one thing.
I hadn't heard of a lot of those. The one that I've heard is that a lot of people have been collecting for years, and there's just less of the product, less of the figures and vehicles being sold. People have already bought what they've wanted, and they're not at the point where they either need to or have to sell it. So what's left is going up in price.
That's a possibility. Yeah. So that blames it on older guys like me for buying things and then just not selling them. It's just our collection is just a black hole. They get sucked in and they never go out. But that's a possibility though, because my collection has become kind of a black hole. Stuff gets sucked in, and then I don't resell anything. So yeah.
You are this year. You have a theme. What is your theme for your channel for this year?
The theme for the channel this year is sub teams. So last year it was the 90s. This year we're going to look at a lot of sub teams. That means a lot of Tiger Force, Python Patrol, Night Force. And it won't all be 80s. We'll dive into some Ninja Force and stuff like that as well. But it's going to veer us back more toward the 80s a little bit, which is something that my audience has kind of wanted to do, and that I have wanted to do. I'm more enthusiastic when I can review something that I'm more familiar with and I have more of a personal connection with. So doing sub teams, I think, will give us an opportunity to revisit Night Force and the Dreadnoks, which I consider a sub team.
Okay.
So we'll be getting into a lot of that. One thing I have decided is that I'm going to do fresh reviews on the 3 original Dreadnoks. I did review those, but it was years and years ago. And so I want to do fresh reviews of Buzzer, Ripper, and Torch. And I think maybe Zartan and Zorana and Xandar as well. So
what about
Iron Grenadiers? Yeah, see?
Okay.
That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about.
What is do you have a favorite sub team?
I think my favorite sub team is the aforementioned Dreadnoks.
Okay.
If you can consider them like a sub team within Cobra, which I kind of do, sort of. The old punk rocker in me appreciates the sense of anarchy on display with the Dreadnoks. So I think probably the Dreadnoks, but a close second would probably be Night Force. There's some really sweet Night Force figures out there. Some Night Force figures that were significant improvements even on the originals. So I dig me some Night Force as well.
I didn't even know that Night Force existed until I was an adult.
Me too.
But it kills me that they were there when I was a kid. I just didn't know. I didn't know they were there, so I didn't.
And apparently not produced in large enough numbers because they're rare now. And Toys R Us exclusives. And I don't know about you, but as a kid, my parents never liked taking us to Toys R Us because we would want everything. So they minimized that. I never saw them. Of course, I was a bit older at the time, and I was kind of getting out of G.I. Joe at the time. But I never saw them until I was an adult collector.
It was very rare for my dad never took us, but my mom occasionally would take us to Toys R Us. But my grandmother really spoiled me and my brother. Every time we would spend the weekend at her house, she would take us to go, and it was awesome. Painted Plastic suggested Cobra Law. I don't think Cobra Law is really a sub team.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Is it Azarius? Lots of donuts and grape soda.
I have tried that combination. It's not very good, I have to say. Oh, October Guard. Yeah, that's another good one. There aren't enough October Guard in the vintage era.
I was going to say
the October Guard figures were released post vintage. Which I think is unfortunate because that is a great sub team.
Here's all right. So we're oh wait, hold on. Classic Action Slaughter's Marauders.
Yeah.
All right. So last question for tonight: what is a character that you wish that they had made for the vintage line that they never made?
I would go with Quinn, the Inuit tracker from issue number 2 of the comic book. Now there were later figures released, but in the vintage era, we never got a Quinn, and the character died in the comic book, so I guess I shouldn't have expected to get a Quinn figure, but as a kid, I saw the guy in the comic book, and I thought, okay, when's the figure coming out? Mm-hmm. We got a Baroness after all, and that originated in the comic book. I always liked the character. Oddly, I have not gotten a modern Quinn figure. which is one that, I mean, even though I don't collect modern figures, that is one I probably would enjoy having. But yeah, I would have, even at the time, even back in the day, I wanted a Quinn action figure. I wanted one just like in the comic.
I do have the Quinn figure they released for the Retaliation line, and he is really awesome. He's really cool.
I've seen some reviews of it, and it looks great. It looks fantastic.
Yeah. And they never did a Dr. Venom either.
That's right.
Well, they later they did
Yeah.
that for the vintage line. I guess it's because Larry, Mr. Hama, I think that was his creation, and it wasn't a Hasbro.
Yeah, he created some characters that were that could be killed off.
Yeah.
You know, because in his view, you can't really have a war comic without death. But he couldn't kill off any of the main characters because Hasbro wouldn't let him do that. So he invented General Flag and Quinn and Dr. Venom and Scarface. And over time, each of those were killed off as part of, you know, his creative process. But the only way they could be killed off is because they were not action figures.
And a lot of the early comic stuff, I didn't have access to and didn't even know about, but I believe it was 90 or 91, they released the trading card set that I still have, and that showcased a lot of the characters that I missed out on, that they weren't even in the comics anymore. They told about when Cobra Commander threw, like, was it Mindbender and a bunch of people in that bunker and buried him alive, and talking about that, and I was like, oh wow, I missed all this stuff.
Yeah, that was a very noteworthy moment in Cobra history, when Cobra Commander literally buried all of his internal enemies in this landlocked freighter, just buried them alive. Yeah.
All right, so I'm just seeing if there's anything else. Oh wait, I don't think the Headhunters. Do the Headhunters count as a sub team?
Kind of.
That's like on the fence, I think.
It's more, well, it's more of its own faction, but might squeeze something in there anyway. I don't know. Although, like, the second version of the Headhunters were like all in Cobra. The file card basically erased their connection to the Headman and made them Cobra operatives. So I don't know. You could count them that way if you want to.
All right, so we're a little over an hour now. I think we're going to wrap things up. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in and joining us here on the live stream. I really want to thank HCC for joining us tonight and taking time out of his very busy schedule. And I think it would be appropriate for us to sign off with a Yo Joe. So
Okay.
Everyone that's watching or listening to this, I want you to stop what you're doing. I want you to stand up, go to the window, open it, stick your head out, and on the count of three, we're all going to yell, Yo Joe. 1, 2, 3. Yo Joe!
Yo Joe!
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.